I have a Blue Devil guest today. Her name is Julia Kahky, and she has a big smile right now because that's her alma mater. And Julia, say hello to everybody on the show today.
Hey there. Yep. Proud Blue Devil.
Well, I can see now I knew how to produce it. I happen to be a Trojan, a USC Trojan,
Mhm.
University of Southern California, not South Carolina. And I know that in the world of college alumni, we're always quite proud of where we attended. And that I know that you're very involved in the Blue Devil community, which gives you a little bit of distinction in the market. And why don't you tell us, how did you get into venture capital investing? I mean, I find that fascinating. You're able to help people really grow from their dream into reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was definitely a long journey to get into venture capital because my background is actually in corporate finance, where I was working at General Motors for 4 years.
Mhm.
So I leveraged the experience that I did have at GM, where in my first role, I was working with telematics, working with APIs, understanding business development. My second role was really focusing on condensing a lot of dense information and presenting it to leadership. In my third role, I was working on the go-to-market strategy. And in my fourth role there, I was working in business development for a SaaS platform that we were building in the incubator space at the company. So I really leveraged all of those opportunities to sort of paint my story as someone who is really interested in being able to build out businesses and understand what it takes to go from 0 to 100 for a company, and sort of what difficulties they may overcome, and really making sure that I'm putting together information that is helpful for executives who are making these big decisions, giving them the information that they need to make really important decisions.
Awesome. And you also have a skill at writing, I noticed.
I do love writing. Yes, I've written a few blogs, and I'm a freelancer at Unwritten currently.
Oh, great, great. First question, how would your friends describe you?
So my friends would definitely describe me as outgoing. I'm someone who absolutely loves engaging in conversations with anyone at any time. They describe me as honest. I'm someone who definitely values and prides myself on my ability to always say what I'm thinking, tell people how I'm feeling about certain things, give my opinions on things. And I think that that's something that has also helped me in venture, because I'm someone who doesn't shy away from expressing my thoughts and feelings on a particular company or on a particular investment. So I think outgoing, honest, and loyal. I'm the type of friend who, if anything is going wrong, I will drop what I'm doing, no questions asked, head over there and help out in whatever way I can. I had one friend who was living in New York and called me with an issue. And I booked a flight from Detroit that afternoon to go and visit her just to make sure that everything was okay. So I think those are probably the three biggest things that define my personality.
Great. You have a little bit of caretaker in you.
Oh, definitely a little bit. For people that I truly care about, I'm 100% always there.
Great. Okay. And what is your greatest accomplishment? Something up to this point, you're a young woman, but I'm sure you've been able to achieve a lot. You seem like a goal-oriented individual.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's silly to say, but my biggest accomplishment really was getting into Duke. It was something where it was so defining of who I am as a person today. And, I interview students today who are Blue Devil hopefuls, and what they bring to the table is so incredible. It's amazing, the diversity of thought and activities. And I am truly grateful every single day that I was able to stand out amongst hundreds and thousands of impressive applicants. And so I think that that was something where I knew that Duke was going to be the perfect school for me. And so really put everything I could into my application, spent lots of extra time perfecting my essays and my answers to the short questions. And so for me, being able to accomplish that was something that even still to this day, I'm proud of. And I can't even believe it.
Well, I would say your smile is genuine. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on camera. This is real. I mean, you'd make your dentist proud.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah. Or at least the most recent hygienist, something. So that's great.
I owe it all to Crest.
All right. Well, what did you, wow, I can hear this. What do you wish you had known when you started out?
So I think, starting out in my career, I really wish I understood the importance of being able to say no. I was very much someone when I first started in my career, if there was any sort of opportunity, I was the first one to jump on it. I would take it. And if that meant working on weekends, if it meant working late hours, I didn't really care because I thought that I had to be a team player and that I always had to say yes to everything. But one of the really important things about being a team player is understanding that everyone shares the responsibility and that you don't need to be the captain at every given point in time, that there are opportunities when you can be the captain of a specific project and that someone else can be the captain of another project. And I think that's something that was really important that I learned after a couple of years in my career, is that just because you say no to something does not mean that you're less of a team player or that you're not willing to give something your all. Sometimes it means that you just have to take care of yourself a little bit, because if you don't take care of yourself, then everything else falls apart.
Good point. And some of the things I tell my clients when they have all these multiple decisions to make, I say no to the good and yes to the great. When opportunities arise, be selective. And I think that summarizes what you're just sharing. It's like sometimes you don't have to take and work all that time. You do need to have a little bit of balance. So what are you curious about right now?
So that's a really interesting question.
And answer it any way you want. That can be personal or career. You'd be surprised the answers I get. So I don't want to put any limits on it.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I'm really curious about is sort of understanding artificial intelligence and where that is going to eventually take us, and sort of how it's currently working. I think that understanding from a very macro level is fairly conceptual, where you can understand that it ingests information and is able to digest that information and spit out information that sounds very similar to something that humans would be able to develop. But I'm really curious to see what are sort of the things that need to change in order for it to be really robust and to be really effective? And then what does really robust and really effective look like? That's something that I'm really interested in, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there to make a lot of really big improvements overall in a variety of different industries and just life in general.
Okay. AI. My last two guests, AI experts in different categories.
Really?
Yes. So this is certainly timely.
I swear I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, how would you answer this? What's something you have failed at?
Yeah, so there's a number of opportunities that I can sort of think of. I think that I will be the first to admit that I did not get into my top choice university, and I did not get into my top choice social club in a number of organizations throughout my life. I did not necessarily get my first choice job when I worked at General Motors, but I think those failures all turned into things that were fantastic, that I ended up going to Duke, which ended up being the best 4 years of my life. And in terms of extracurriculars that I was involved at General Motors, I was not necessarily included in the ones that I had wanted to be a part of, but the ones that I ended up getting to be a part of ended up being so life-changing and so transformative. And the role that I ended up joining at GM when I first joined the company was so helpful. It was new business development, which is exactly what I realized that I wanted to be doing. So I think, it was a lot of opportunities where maybe had I, pushed a little harder, done one or two things differently, I would have been able to achieve what I thought at that time was an achievement. But I'm definitely a firm believer that you have to turn every failure into an opportunity and leverage that.
You've piqued my interest. What was your number one choice university? I have to hear this.
So back when I was 17 years old, I had a dream of going to Harvard. So that was my top choice school.
Interesting. I suspected that was going to be your answer. And I had the opportunity as well to go to Harvard. And full confession, quite a few years later, the reason I didn't fill out my application to go, and I had an uncle and my uncle's best friend were Harvard graduates from the 40s, from right after the World War II. I didn't go because I'm from LA and I didn't want to endure cold weather. That was my justification. Because that kind of branding, as you know, you're involved in academics. A Harvard diploma is one of its kind. I mean, there's only one Harvard, and that was my rationale. So that's interesting. You had shared that same desire, but had it been on the West Coast, I would have gone. So I defaulted to USC, which I don't regret at all. Years later. So it's just kind of funny. Okay. And if you could have coffee with any historical figure, by the way, this is my favorite question, by far my favorite question that I ask on every interview because I'm a history buff. Who would you choose? And the person, either man or woman, has to be deceased.
Yeah. So I'm also a little bit of a history buff. So the person that I would want to go to get coffee with is actually Thomas Edison. He has over 1,000 patents. I've read multiple books on him. I'm extremely interested in all of the things that he did to really change the way that we exist in society today. His work with film. I'm such a huge movie buff and would love to see what was going through his mind as he was, helping develop the moving image and the light bulb, which is something that we take for granted today. Like we don't even think about when we walk into a room, just turning on the lights. And I think the way that he was able to work through thousands and thousands of iterations to come up with something, just understand where he was getting that inspiration from, like how he continued to work at something after failing that many times. I'm someone who grew up in the acting sphere, and there was a certain point where I was just failing too many times that I just didn't want to pursue it anymore. So curious to understand what it was that was pushing him to make it to, developing all of these amazing inventions that we have today.
So he failed his way to success is one way I would describe Thomas Edison. He did not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I haven't asked this before, but I want a second from you. Let's go even back. More historic. Let's go back centuries. Thomas Edison is American. That's a very rote answer for so many of us who are in this field. But let's go back further.
Okay, so that's definitely a little bit tougher because he's always one of my favorite celebrities, and I guess not celebrity, historical figure. So if I had to go a couple centuries back,
or you could go back 100 years plus, other than Thomas Edison, who's somebody else that you would like to sit down and have coffee with, and you could have an interpreter if necessary.
Okay. I hate this because it seems so cliched now that the musical has come out, but I really am interested in everything that Alexander Hamilton did for this country. So it's not just because of the musical, but I actually am reading the full 900-page biography from Ron Chernow, and I find it so extremely fascinating how this immigrant who moved to the United States and immediately felt such a passion for the country wanted to give his life to the country, and how he was reading all this different types of literature. He really was a Renaissance man and trying to read as much as he could to understand how to build out a society and how to build a government from the ground up, and how he was taking everything that he saw around him and how he integrated that into building out the Treasury for the United States, a system that's been around for over 250 years. And so would love to just hear his story and see what it was like, coming here with absolutely nothing, and what it was like realizing that you were on the verge of creating something that was going to stand the test of time. I look at entrepreneurs and I'm in awe of them all the time. I can't imagine having to start a country from scratch, let alone, a small, software business.
Okay. Well, interesting second choice. All right. The Thomas Edison and then Alexander. Okay. All right. Who's been your most important professional mentor? Now, this is obviously more recent.
Yeah. So a professional mentor that I've had, I actually had a colleague who I met up with at GM right when I started, who really told me to get my hands dirty, get integrated, ask for additional work, when I had capacity to do so, and really leverage my personality. I never really understood how important networking was in a career. I always thought that, work should speak for itself. And from there, you'll sort of get promoted in that sense. But I've really found that throughout my career, just talking to people and leveraging my network has given me exposure to so many opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily have had exposure to had she not given me that advice and had she not introduced me to some of the people that I still keep in touch with today. So she was definitely someone who was really influential in helping me succeed in my career.
Okay. So a colleague. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're still kind of young, but let's say if you were to go back to your 18-year-old Julia, what advice would you give that 18-year-old right before she goes off to Duke University? You Blue Devil.
So I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I sort of wish I understood in college it was really my sophomore year. I wish I'd sort of said, it's okay. That you don't have to do everything. I think my freshman year, I was just trying to learn how to get integrated. But by the time I got to be a sophomore, I was sort of overwhelmed by all of the things that I felt like I needed to do both academically and extracurricularly. And I think that a lot of it sort of was overwhelming. And I struggled a little bit to cope with that. And I think that has sort of, it still sort of gets to me sometimes where I feel like there's so many things that I need to do in my professional career and in my extracurriculars. And there's so many things that I need to be involved with that it sort of gets to be overwhelming. And it sort of goes back to what I mentioned in the beginning about it's okay to say no. I think that's definitely something that I wish I could continue to build on, is just making sure that I'm taking time to reflect and say, like, do I really need to be doing all these things? Am I getting enjoyment from all of these things? It's okay to take a minute for yourself and say, you know what, I don't really feel like going to this today or something like that.
Okay. What is your primary goal right now?
I think, my primary goal right now it's really to become the best version of me that I can be. I know that I'm never going to be the greatest X in the world, but if I can be the greatest X that I have been thus far in my life, I will consider that an achievement. So today I'm 26 years old. If I can be better than the 25-year-old I was last year and better than the 24-year-old I was the year before, that's something that's really important to me. And so whether that be just learning another language or developing friendships that I already have and building new relationships with people, just continue to really become the best me, the Maslow's hierarchy, the self-actualization. That's something that I'm, really striving for every single day.
So what's your plan to achieve this? I mean, because a goal without a plan is just a dream.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think it's just taking just small steps. Like, I'm someone who knows that I wish I had just more general knowledge. So for things like that, I'm constantly just reading and looking up articles. And when I'm watching a TV show or reading a book and there's something that I don't know, making sure that I'm going online and doing enough research to make sure that I really do understand it. And the same thing comes from work. A lot of times I'm in calls where I don't necessarily understand what the context is. So I make sure that I'm going and I'm looking up what that is about. And in terms of just, fostering current relationships, making sure that, when I sit back and I see something, online that a friend did, reaching out personally, not just like liking or commenting, but reaching out and saying like, hey, like, update me, like, what's going on right now. And then fostering new relationships. I live in a brand new city. And so I'm making sure that, I'm just going out and I'm trying to meet new people, see new things, and trying to just, get out there and do as much as I can every single day.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from Florida originally.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then you went to North Carolina and then ended up in Atlanta. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
So how will you feel if you don't achieve one of your goals? Because you seem like a very focused, goal-oriented individual.
So I think that it's all about framing. I think that goals oftentimes can be very lofty and they can be very vague, as you referenced before. But I think reframing goals so that they are something that is achievable. So if the goal, for example, is to learn Spanish, that's something that's very difficult to achieve given, my age and just, how much time and where I live. So breaking that down a little bit smaller, being able to converse with someone in Spanish or being able to read an article in Spanish, just breaking it down into smaller segments. So that way things don't necessarily feel like failures. They just feel like steps on a path to a larger goal. So setting smaller goals along the way.
Okay. And how do you overcome challenges?
So I think for me, again, it sort of comes back to the reframing. When I think about a challenge, I think about, okay, what are the steps that I need to do to overcome it? And what are the small incremental steps that I can take to get there? And if it's a challenge that I can't necessarily overcome, is there a smaller challenge or is there a different challenge that I can overcome? So it's all about reframing. And I think just also, acceptance is something that I know that I need to work on. But if there's something that I can't do, learning to accept the things that I can't do, I think that's something that is really important, is that not everyone can do everything. And there comes a time where you do need to sit back and say, I can't do this.
Okay. Well, there's something that most people that are goal-oriented that I have found in my travels, and I've had the good fortune to speak at events in 61 countries now. I'm not 26 years old, so I've had a little more years on the planet. And I find this to be true in just about everybody that is goal-oriented, wants to leave somewhat of a legacy and feel like there's a purpose for their existence. So I'm going to ask this. If you had to write a book tomorrow, what would you write about?
I'd actually write about humor. I think humor has played such a big part in my life, where I love watching stand-up. I love performing stand-up. I take serious situations and I try to make them funny. I was talking to someone the other day who said, I don't know what it is about you, but when I see you, I always want to crack a joke. And I said, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel like you can't laugh around me. And so that was something that was so heartwarming to me, that I sort of give off a presence where people feel like they don't have to take themselves too seriously, because I very much am a believer that life is too short to take everything too seriously, that you have to add a little bit of humor here and there. So for me, I would love to just talk about how humor has played such a big role in my life, and how I think that sometimes it can be an unhealthy coping mechanism, but that you can actually angle it to become a healthy coping mechanism.
Okay, I might be picking a scab from your past. When you were declined from Harvard, just because this was your first choice, did you handle it with humor? Did you beat yourself up? What did you tell Julia?
So I guess in retrospect, it was a little funny. My reaction was actually reaching out to someone that I worked with and asking to ride on his motorcycle. So I very much had been very, very, very uptight for a long period of time, trying to get perfect grades and be captain of everything. And when I found out that that was not going to be enough to get into Harvard, I figured it was okay to let loose a little bit. So I rode on a motorcycle for the first time in my entire life. My parents are probably going to kill me.
Wow.
But for me, in retrospect, that was so funny that was my reaction. And so I don't know that at the time it was humorous, but when you think back on it, what a funny reaction, where, some people get really sad and they cry. And for me, I was like, I want to go live some life experiences now. So I guess, in retrospect, it was funny.
Okay. So you put a humorous spin on it. Good. And, now, you're obviously a strong advocate of your university and work. What's one question you wished I had asked, and how would you have answered? This gives you a lot of latitude here. What do you want to convey through this interview and communicate to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah. So, there's a couple things that come to mind. They're all a little bit silly, but I think that they all relate back to my personality, in that I love being involved in a million different things. I love having a million different interests. I love being the kind of person where we can have a conversation about literally anything, and that I can jump in on the conversation. So I think, the two things, one question would be, what's your favorite movie? And another question would be, what's your favorite memory? And so, my favorite movie, I have to sort of break it down into three. I always say that it's Forrest Gump, Goodfellas, and Pulp Fiction. And then my favorite memory is actually when we won the NCAA basketball championship. And I think that really shows that I'm interested in arts, in sports. I'm interested in academics. And I think that that's something that I love, just about my personality, is that I have so many diverse interests. And I love just talking to people about literally anything. If you're someone who's never seen a Broadway show, that's okay. We can talk about college sports. If you're someone who has never laced up a pair of running shoes in your entire life, we can talk about classical music, or we can talk about modern art. And so for me, that's something that I just love doing. I love talking about anything.
Okay. Diverse interests. By the way, those are all three great movies.
Thank you.
Pulp Fiction is kind of on the edge. If you like that, I'm going to make a recommendation. This is going back a few years, but if you like that genre of movie, then you may want to look at Deliverance and Clockwork Orange.
Oh, I love Clockwork Orange. Stanley Kubrick's one of my favorite directors.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, you even know who he is. I'm surprised with your age you even know about this, but most people of your age group that I mentioned that, because that was one of the life-changing. I mean, you don't forget Deliverance. That was the one that John Voight he became a star, and several actors, Ned Beatty, and oh gosh, I'm blanking on the main actor in this, but it was a fantastic movie in that genre. You'll love it. If you like the Kill Bill series or any of those types of movies, yeah, you'll love that. Pulp Fiction.
Love Tarantino.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. But he got his inspiration from a lot of those earlier movies to go on the edge, on the fringe. So it definitely, if you like Clockwork Orange, you'll like Deliverance. It'll leave a lasting imprint. And you remember, oh yeah, Mitch said that. So, okay.
Perfect. Huge cinephile, so always in the mood for recommendations.
Yeah, I'm a movie buff myself. Love it. So how can we support you? How can we leverage this show and maybe some of the contacts I have? What would be a great way to assist you in your career?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of venture capital really is all about, building your network and being able to share ideas. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like deal flow and sharing companies. It can really just be thoughts of how you think about AI, how you think about healthcare and the future of work and things like that. So for me, I love talking to people and having people reach out to me and just saying, hey, would love to chat with you and learn what you think about the fintech market for the next 10 years or something like that. And so for me, just continuing to build my network, that's huge. And learning as much as I can from people who have industry expertise, because you can Google all day long, but until you're talking to someone who's actually worked in the field, I can talk about auto for days because I worked at GM for 4 years. I think speaking with someone is definitely the best thing. And so just continuing to build my network.
Do you have an area of specialization? Because I know in VC, people specialize in healthcare. They might specialize in AI companies. Tell me what areas of expertise are you most comfortable other than auto?
Yeah, so for me, I just have a passion for mental and behavioral health. I worked at an outpatient clinic when I was in college, worked at a nutrition clinic. I continue to read up on, latest DSM diagnoses. And for me, I love mental and behavioral health. I'm so happy that it's something that's coming to the forefront and that we can talk about it the same way that we talk about physical health now. So for me, I could talk about that for days.
One acronym you went by very quickly, BSM, DSM, what is that?
The Diagnostic and Statistics Manual. It's just a list of every, mental and behavioral health diagnoses.
Okay. Yeah, that was glossed over. It was one acronym I wasn't familiar with. Okay. Yeah. All right. And that's how they can get in touch with you is right here, is through LinkedIn at Julia M. Kahky. Mm-hmm. I am pronouncing that correctly. Kahky?
Yes, khaki like the pants.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I wear them. All right. And what would you say about your guest experience on the show?
I thought this was great. I love getting to, think about things that I necessarily wouldn't think about. I think asking me to go one step further on which celebrity I would want to get coffee with, that was something that I hadn't thought about before. So I love getting to go one step deeper and sort of think about that a little bit farther. So for me, I thought that was a really interesting experience. I always love reflecting on myself and reflecting on my experience. And I love being able to share, the importance of not taking yourself too seriously and really, following your heart and following your passions.
Well, the reason I asked you a second question is because Thomas Edison comes up a lot.
Oh,
and it's not a bad answer. It's not the wrong answer. It was your answer, which is the correct answer. Mm-hmm. And he's certainly one of my top 5. Mm-hmm. But I wanted something other than him. And your answer, that shifted to another part of your brain.
Yeah.
So it was great. And what is your final word? How do you want to leave this? How are we going to remember Julia, other than this young lady that speaks very quickly, clearly, communicates well, and has got the model smile for any periodontist?
So yes, I do talk very fast. It's funny because in my head I was talking very slowly, like I was.
No. I'm a professional speaker by trade, and I have to stay tuned in to listen to you. You're very fast. That's good, but it causes me to lean forward. It's a compliment.
That's funny. So yeah, I mean, I grew up acting, so I always think about like how I speak, like clearly, and try not too quickly.
And you enunciate well. You enunciate very well. Yeah, except for a couple of the acronyms. If I were to just say, I don't know what those are, and you don't want to leave your listener confused.
Yeah, it's definitely something I always try to work on, especially in my writing, is writing out abbreviations. But I think that, a final word that I would like to say is, like I said, I'm someone who loves talking. I have a Calendly and love when people schedule time on there for, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, just learning about people, understanding about their experiences, and really trying to learn as much as I can. I'm someone who loves to, this sounds selfish, take as much as I give, but I mean that in the sense of like advice. I love to take advice. I love to ingest information from other people. And so as much as I love talking and giving out advice, I always love being on the receiving end of that as well. So, my LinkedIn is out there. Would love to, set up time with people who want to just talk about something, anything, teach me something. I love learning. So
you're a sponge.
Yes.
And you get, okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, a clean one. I didn't mean like the kitchen sponge. So there you go.
Right.
Well, this has been a great interview. You've certainly added value and great energy, I would just say. I got a lot of energy, and it was your answers, which is, like I said, my favorite question is, who would you have coffee or tea with? I loved your two answers. They were different. Thomas Edison was special for you, but mentioning another person tapped into something else and of importance for you. And I think the viewers, based on the response I've gotten so far, has been very positive. So thank you for your time today. And we'll do this again because I want to see where you go with your career.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.